Joining me now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, covers baseball for USA Today. It is Weekly Spot. Steve Gardner joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. Steve, how you doing today?
I'm good, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing well. I got to start off with the negative, and then we'll go to the positive. Look, Steve, I'm not too proud to beg. That's why I play the Temptations there. I'm just begging this Phillies team to actually stop blowing games. You got four guys in that bullpen for the Phillies who all have ERAs over 4. Aaron Nola's having this great season, and we can blame the offense all we want, but at some point, Steve, pitchers are gotta throw strikes. They gotta work the sides of the plate. They gotta actually stop throwing softballs to the hitters, right?
Yeah, that's not so much to ask. I mean, at least to find somebody, one guy at least, that can get the job done in crunch time. But when you're not having anybody really come through, that's when things start to go sideways.
Is the Phillies pitching staff as constituted able to turn this around, or are they going to be needing to go out and get more than just a starter if they want to be competitive? Because I look at this team and I say, look, even if you get Pat Neshek, I don't think he solves all of your bullpen problems.
Yeah, I think you have to know, though, that throughout the entire season, you get ebbs and flows and ups and downs. And the one thing, all of these guys in the bullpen have had stretches where they've been pretty good. And so if you're the Phillies, if you're management, if you're Gabe Kapler, you have to feel like at some point these guys are going to start turning things around. But, it's one of those cases where if there's a reliever, an arm, a starter, anything available later on as you get closer to the trade deadline, you have to at least investigate that, because as we've seen so many times, you never have enough arms really to compete the way that you want to. So you have to keep your eyes open. But for the most part, I think the guys have shown in the bullpen right now have shown that they can get the job done at certain stretches. It's just that everybody's having a down stretch right now.
I look at a guy like Nick Pivetta. I kind of feel like he's struggling a little bit because teams now have a book on him, right? A guy pitches X number of starts. Teams have a fuller and fuller scouting report on him. So I think as long as he makes adjustments, he'll find his way. But I do have some questions about Arrieta and Velasquez. I don't think Velasquez is a starter, Steve. I think that his future is in the bullpen. And Arrieta, that strikeout to inning ratio is a little concerning for me.
It is, especially, if they're putting, opponents are putting the ball in play against Arrieta, and there are issues with him pitching behind the ships and things like that. Whenever you've got a pitcher that's not confident in the defensive alignment or anything like that, that's where you get into trouble. And I think that's a concern. I don't know if that's something that can be worked out. If somebody has to give in that regard, whether it's, the coaching staff to maybe limit the shifts a little bit to get Arrieta more comfortable. But, if he's not striking guys out, then the ball's getting put in play more, and it puts the defense more into the equation. And right now, that's not a good mix.
Let's go with the positive for the Phillies. Aaron Nola is having a phenomenal season. And to me, it's more than just the fact that he's basically top 15 in all of baseball in multiple categories. But I never thought I would see a Phillies pitcher, Steve. I thought it might be another team. I've seen great pitchers for other teams. A Phillies pitcher with as high of a wins above replacement as he does. I mean, he's top 5 in all of baseball in WAR. What have you seen from Nola that has made him have such a special season?
I think it's just consistency. It's command of the strike zone, and really, I think experience has helped him, to where you could see some of these signs last year, but the consistency wasn't exactly there the way that you'd like. And now, just another year older, a little bit more experience with the hitters, and he seems to be putting everything all together now. And I think that to me it just shows some signs of maturity, and that's exactly what you want, because you want to see guys that with that kind of talent, be able to improve and continue to get better. And I think that's what Aaron Nola has done, and that's why he is one of the top pitchers, not only in the National League but in all of Major League Baseball right now.
I would argue, Steve, that Aaron Nola, the way he's pitched, is the second best pitcher in the National League. I think Scherzer, we all agree, is the best, but
Yep.
I think Nola is the second best pitcher in the National League. And to me, for a guy at his age to progress as quickly as he could from being in college just a few years ago to now this season, I mean, I think that's a huge deal for the Phillies.
Indeed. And, you have to have a guy like that to be able to be a legitimate contender. You've got to have that ace. And, he gives them that, which, any team in the majors would kill to be able to have that kind of a performer. And so you pair him up with, if Arrieta can, right the ship, so to speak, then you've got that 1-2 punch that you definitely need. But yeah, it's just been a joy to watch, especially if you're a Phillies fan, to see him grow and mature the way that he has.
Talking with Steve Gardner here on 97.3 ESPN, joining us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline in his weekly spot here on Middays with Q on 97.3 ESPN. Steve, let's flip our attention over to the American League with the Yankees for a moment. If I told you that we would come into this season and Gary Sanchez, Aaron Judge, and Giancarlo Stanton would all have what I would consider mediocre batting averages, and the best hitter on the team would be Gleyber Torres, I don't think either of us would have thought that the Yankees have a 43-20 record right now.
No, but I'll tell you what, even though the batting averages aren't great, the Yankees are doing really well at getting on base in front of those guys, allowing when they do hit home runs and hit the ball hard, they're producing a lot of runs. And, that's really the key. It's getting on base. And then when you have performances like Didi Gregorius had in April, and the way Gleyber Torres has come in May and June, that's when you have a team that looks really, really special. And this Yankees lineup, that Sanchez is going to start hitting at some point. That Stanton is going to go on a home run tear at some point. And already this is just a fearsome team in terms of the lineup, in terms of the record. And it feels like they haven't really hit their stride yet. Yeah, this is quite a Yankees team, and I think too, the pitching has been a little bit better than maybe we suspected. So once you put all those factors together, it's shaping up to be a pretty good year for the Yankees.
Before we touch on the pitching, I want to ask you about, they were mentioning this weekend on Sunday Night Baseball about the fact that this Yankees team is on pace to potentially break the Mariners record for home runs. I went back to look at that Mariners team. That Mariners team was significantly older than this Yankees team. Guys like Jay Buhner and Edgar Martinez and Paul Sorrento. Yeah, Ken Griffey Jr. was arguably the best player in baseball at the time, but outside of him and A-Rod, most of that Mariners team were older, grizzled veterans, whereas this Yankees team, this is a lot of young guys. So this team still has a higher ceiling than we really realize.
I think so. And we sort of knew that when you have the AL home run leader joined by the Major League's home run leader last year, put them on the same team, that you're going to see a lot of balls fly out of the park, especially to Yankee Stadium. Not a bad place for hitters to hit home runs. So it's not terribly unexpected, but yeah, it's fun to watch, especially if you're a Yankees fan, because so many of those guys, have the potential to beat you, and you throw in Gleyber Torres, and the balls are just going all over the yard there at Yankee Stadium.
What are your thoughts on Aaron Boone in his first year? This is a guy like Gabe Kapler, like Alex Cora, not a bunch of managerial experience before he took the job. He's very fresh, but it looks like he's handling things very well. What are your impressions of him?
Yeah, I think really when you talk about a manager, you want him to kind of stay out of the way and not be in the limelight and not be, where their decisions are being questioned. And Aaron Boone has done a great job of that, I think. He's been calm. He hasn't made any major mistakes that I can recall. And plus, it helps to have the lineup card that he can put out there every day. But it's more a fact. I think we see this more and more often now of managers being actual managers of people, and that's the most important thing. It's not the strategic when do you pull a pitcher, who do you have in the lineup this day versus the next day. It's more of that managing of people, and Aaron Boone has done a fantastic job of that, it seems to me. And so far, all the reviews from the players have been positive, and you can't argue with the record. So what's not to like about the job that Aaron Boone has done?
Steve Gardner joining us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Steve, let's bounce around the league a little bit. We see Ohtani's on the DL with an arm injury to the chagrin of Rich Quinones. I'm not going to pat myself on the back here per se, but I did feel like I didn't think he could sustain this long term, because to me, I just wasn't sold that as a pitcher he wasn't going to get hurt at some point. I think that his long-term future may be as a hitter instead of a pitcher.
I don't know if I agree with that, but I'll tell you one thing. When the Angels signed him and we found out that there was some, slight tear, a partial tear in his UCL before the season even started, that to me was a red flag. And as it turns out, he ends up, tearing it completely. And at least it seems that way from the reports. We'll know probably in another 3 more weeks when they reevaluate him. But I think because of the stress that the Angels have put on him, even though they tried to reduce his workload, it's still so difficult to pitch, then go out and hit, and go back to pitching. They tried to give him some time off. But I think one of the mistakes that they did make is that they didn't have him throw more in between starts to where, you can't start and stop. You have to have a constant, workload and not be stressed out going, for a long period of rest and then ramping it back up again. I think that may have been where they erred. Or, it could be that was, that elbow ligament was going to tear no matter what. It's a shame because he is one of the most exciting players in baseball. I'd love to see the two-way pitcher, the role for him work out. And it doesn't look like it will, certainly for the rest of this year. But, maybe in the future when he's completely healthy, I would still love to see that innovation in baseball and all the things that he can bring to the game.
Rangers are having a rough season, but Adrian Beltre made history last night. He's now the hitter with the most hits in Major League history who lives outside of the United States. Adrian Beltre has had a very fascinating career, Steve. I remember when he left the Dodgers, it went to the Mariners. I mean, for all intents and purposes, most people thought he was done because he had such a rough go with the Mariners. He revived his career in Texas. So when you look at Beltre's career, what is your perspective on it?
Well, I think he's been underrated for a long time, and that's hard to say when you've got somebody who has been so good for and been so consistent. There's some injuries in there I think have detracted a little, but to me, he's a complete player. Not only great offensively, but superb defensively. And I think when you start talking about the complete package, you have to talk about Adrian Beltre in the same breath with guys like Mike Schmidt, Chipper Jones, and the all-time great third baseman. I think he deserves to be in that same sort of class and those same breaths. And to me, it would not be a surprise if he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. His career has been that good, even though he hasn't played in that really a whole bunch of big markets. He's been so consistent and so excellent for his entire career, and the longevity, counting up all the hits and everything, I think only cements his reputation.
We're hearing some rumors that the Mets might try to trade one of their arms. How likely or unlikely is DeGrom or Syndergaard to be in another uniform in August?
I think one of them, it's probably pretty good. The Mets need so much in terms of their rebuild, and the one asset that they have to offer is ace caliber starting pitching. I think you would probably see, if they had their druthers, to be them wanting to keep one of them and maybe trading one. And it looks like DeGrom is 29. Syndergaard is 25. So if you're going to rebuild, it seems like you would keep the younger guy and trade the guy that essentially has been healthy and has been the ace this season and pitched in just incredibly hard luck. The question is, are the Mets prepared to do that? Is the front office and ownership in line with each other and willing to make that move? I think reality is going to have to set in, though, and because the market for starting pitching is going to be so thin, I mean, who else is out there? There aren't really any aces that are on the trade block. The Mets have the upper hand there. They'd be foolish not to use that advantage this year. So I think we'll see one of those guys traded before the deadline.
Follow him on Twitter at Steve A. Gardner on Twitter. Steve A. Gardner. Can't forget that A in the Twitter handle there, Steve. Appreciate you joining us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch up with you next week.
Sure will. Thank you. We'll talk to you later.